Hello, good evening everyone, and welcome to In Studio Live, the 61st edition. This is week 52. We are at the end of tonight's show. We will have completed 1 year's worth of live streams, and we'll be celebrating that first year of live streams on Sunday night with a few announcements, a little bit of a look back, a few changes that I'm going to be talking about, but that's all to come. Let's get on with tonight's show. Oh, and I've got my buttons wrong on this app. Never mind, that was not meant to do that. I know exactly why it's done what it's done. I've minimized something I shouldn't have. And I do need this display. Yep, that's better. Right, okay. I'm still using the mobile phone again for doing all the switching. I've ordered the real life thing, and when I ordered it, I was told it'll be dispatched on the 1st of March. 1st of March came and 1st of March went, and then I got an email saying, sorry, we're going to dispatch this on the 29th of March instead. So I've got a month to wait before I get the little gizmo for automating a lot of the live stream goodness. Right, anyway, on we go. So very briefly, if you are new here, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you get to know what's coming up and what's going live and new videos. Well, a new video on its way. It should have been live by now, but YouTube has decided it's still processing it, and it's been processing it for 4 hours. Maybe longer actually, which is really annoying. Yeah, when you are watching videos, please leave me a comment, especially if you're watching this on replay, and like the videos as well. All those things tell YouTube my channel is worth presenting to other people and showing to them, which is what I need to keep the show going. Thank you to everyone who's been sharing links and telling friends about the show and inviting people to the Facebook group. And talking to the Facebook group, there's the link to it. You can also find it down below the show, and that's where we continue the conversation during the week. The other link you might want to know about is my newsletter. Again, should have gone out by now, but it's been delayed for the YouTube video to finish processing. As soon as that's done, I can get the newsletter out. So, I like to say thank you to the people who've been supporting the show through my Buy Me a Coffee, well, Buy Me a Cuppa actually, campaign, which is basically Buy Me a Coffee website. And each live stream, I put a name on the mug of someone who supported the show. And this week, it's back to Peter Saltiel. Cheers, Peter. Thank you for all the cups of tea that you've bought me. And you know, I really, really appreciate every single one of them. So cheers, Peter. Right. So moving on. What have we got on the show tonight? Was that my shortest intro yet? Anyway, on the show tonight, we have got, well, feedback, basically. It's the feedback show. I've got some emailed images, and I'd like to thank everyone who has been emailing images. It's so much better to receive them that way than me culling them off the Facebook group. And in fact, for the first time ever, we've got more emailed images than Facebook ones tonight. Which is got to be good. I'm going to do a Photoshop Basics tutorial, and I'm doing it live this week rather than pre-recorded. So thought I'd bring the changes. And I'll go through the Facebook images as well. Only a handful of them this week, mainly because most of you have been sending them via email. So there's not as many not as many images to go through this week as some weeks. So there we go. Oh no Lightroom 2-minute tip this week. Haven't got one for you. Sorry. On there. And of course, we've got the ongoing live Q&A. So any questions, stick them in the chat, in the live chat, and we can look at them as we go on. Just one thing to ask: if you have a look at the Facebook group, then there is a link there to a survey. This is a MailChimp, SurveyMonkey survey, and it's all about the live stream, what's working, what isn't. We're coming up to that first year. Well, we're at that first year anniversary, so it's a good time just to look back and then look forward and make any appropriate changes, because there's no point just doing the same thing over and over again. This has to evolve, and the evolution of it will be based on your feedback. So if you haven't already done it, please go and fill that survey in for me, and the results of that I will talk about on Sunday. A bit of a special one on Sunday. There will be some tutorial in there, but I'm going to concentrate actually on the live stream and its value. Looking back and looking forward, how we can get the most out of it. And I know that means some things need to change at my end. And some of you have already highlighted those in the survey. Thank you for that. Do appreciate it. Right, so yeah, get on with that. Right, any questions? No questions in the chat. So, yeah, there is a delay, and you can always email me questions at contactme@ians-studio.co.uk. So let's have a look at the images which have been sent to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. And now, if I've got this set up right, a single button press should bring Lightroom up on my screen and put it on the display for you. Here we go. Yay, it worked. How about that then? Right, okay, so this is where I now need to work out which display I'm on. That's the one I want. So let's have a look at the images which got sent in via email this week, and give some feedback on them. First of all, let's have a look at this one from Tim Cosford. He's posted it to Facebook as well, and this was a snap, an impromptu shot that he took of an artist. He was out birding, I think, he said in his post. I really like the way this one's been put together. Now, I've been talking a lot about rules of composition on the live stream recently, and you can see this ticks the boxes for that. We've got, can you see? Yeah, you can just about see my cursor. On the 1/3 line at the bottom, 1/3 line down here, we've got framing going on at the top, we've got negative space in this area. So the whole thing just works. And I love the way he's just looking off, and we're wondering, what is it he's actually looking at with this image? So really nice one there, Tim. Well put together. I don't think there's much I'd want to change on that image at all. Another one from Tim, this was on a mentored shoot that he'd done, and again, it's portraiture. A couple of things on this just to watch for, Tim. I love the pose and the angles of it. We've got this S shape in there, quite a subtle one, but it is there, and that's always good to have in an image. The thing to watch with it is these specular highlights on there. I don't mind these so much because they're very close to her and they're drawing our eye towards her, but I'm also finding my eye drawn out to these over at the side. So let's just pop into the develop module and have a look at what we can do with that. And let's just go full screen for you. And we could solve it if we keep the aspect ratio on there. We could just solve it with a slight move like that, but I like the space you've got around her generally on there. So the other way, if I reset that, undo that, come out of there, would be to see if we can't do something with those in the edit. So let's see, there's a couple of things we could do with them. I'm going to see whether I can't just deal with them with a local adjustment brush. Haven't tried this in advance, so what I'm going to do, take the highlights down, take the exposure down with it, and I've got a nice low flow on there, which means I can build it up. The feather high, bring the feather down just a little bit more. So now, in theory, I should just be able to, you see how those are now getting that little bit darker in that area? If I put auto mask on as well, that will allow me just to target the specular highlights on that. Again, just bringing them down that fraction so that they're less of a draw. Now, I should be able to just, no, I'll leave the colouring as it is, the hue as it is on there. With that, maybe if I just bring the tint down to be a little bit more greeny with it as well on that. So now let's see what we've got on there. Let's come out of the adjustment brush, which is K, or clicking on there, and let's fit that on the screen. So that's less of a draw. It's a little bit grey in that one, which we can actually hide a little bit by adding a, yes, you guessed it, a vignette to it. I think a vignette will work nicely on this one. So something down like that. So before and after, there's before and after. And you can see it just dulls those down just a fraction on there. Right, moving along, next one also by Tim. This is a look over the shoulder. Again, an assisted shoot, and I think it's okay. It's an okay shot. It doesn't do much for me, I'll be perfectly honest with you, Tim, on there. I mean, technically it's good. I don't like the coat. Now, if this was a catalogue shoot for a product, then showing the coat, then maybe. But my eye is immediately drawn to this logo on it, and it's, to me, this is just ordinary streetwear. It doesn't have a wow factor to it in terms of what she's wearing, whereas your previous one, there's a wow factor in this that you wouldn't expect somebody dressed like that, barefoot, to come across them as they're walking through a forest. And also the torn off arms with it. It may even just be a wraparound bit of material, actually, looking at it, I can't tell. So there's something unusual about that, whereas that, there isn't. The other thing to watch is this pose and where the chin is in respect to the garment. It's sort of hiding part of the chin, which I don't like on there. So I like the fact you've put her on the 1/3 line. You've masked some of this highlight, which is drawing my eye down to this sort of area, which is not where I want my eye to be. I want my eye to be up on the subject's face. So again, I would probably do something very similar about dulling that down in post-production like that. And just a little bit along that sort of area so that it's not drawing the eye quite as much as it was. So come out of there, K to come out, and the before and after, you can see the difference it makes. It's a little bit artificial on there, but it's enough just to stop the eye being drawn towards it, or to help on that. So moving on. Right, this one is from Anthony Barker, I believe. And let's have a look at the shooting data on here. Right, what camera? ISO 50. Right, a focal length of 3.95 millimeters. That tells me it's a phone shot. Yes, Hawaii. I can't say it. That Chinese one. My apologies for that. I do like the sharpness on the drop. There's a little bit of distortion on there, but that's because it's from a mobile phone. The bottom area doesn't add much to it. Let's get rid of that to start with. And let's tighten it up on this side. The top, I like some of the blue in there, and that side's not adding much. So could we do something like that with it? Now, I don't know whether you'd have been able to do that close in camera, Anthony, but that's the sort of thing to aim for with it. But even so, we've got this bright area up at the top. You might have been better just shooting without that in there. And okay, I know I haven't got the resolution for doing this, but something like a square crop like that, and let the brightness of the sky be seen in the droplet of water with it. Now, I don't know whether that's whether you'd be able to achieve that directly in the phone by getting in that close. Will it focus that close? It depends on your phone. For those of you watching this who are using DSLRs and similar, a macro lens is what I would work on here, and I would concentrate on the droplet rather than the scene around with that. Right, moving along, there's another one of Anthony's to come. I don't know where it is at the moment, but there's one to come. Right, here we've got one from Gary Platt, and this I think is the Buxton crescent on there. I love the angle down, looking down at Gary. I think it's nicely balanced with the curves coming in more or less equally from top and bottom on there. Good verticals on there. Let's have a look at it a bit bigger. Good verticals on it, and really nice monochrome processing. I like the split toning you've done with it as well to give it a slight sepia tone, but you've not taken it too far, so that works nicely on there. And it's tack sharp. Let's have a look at the settings on this. What have we got? ISO 250. That's doing nicely. 33mm prime lens. That's no, not prime lens. On the good old 24 to 70 f2.8. Yeah, that is a nice. That'll be a nice sharp lens. And on the Sony camera, yeah, works nicely on there. 40th of a second, certainly fast enough to handhold. F10 for the depth of field on there, and it looks sharp the whole depth of it as well. So really well done on that one, Gary. Right, these roots. This is a bit of a take it or leave it shot as far as I'm concerned. I think my eye's getting pulled up to this light area at the top is the first thing to say. So I would definitely try and lose that. And I'd probably go, for me, I'd probably really go the whole hog with the contrast on it, something like that. Maybe. I've just realised something else that's happened on here. No bad thing for this image actually, but my settings have got applied when I pulled them in. So you've got a little bit of extra clarity on all these images. Which is no bad thing actually for video, because video will tend to soften it a little bit. It's interesting. I think there'll be lots of people who like it, but it doesn't do much for me, to be perfectly honest. And given there's moss on there, I wonder what this would be like in colour. I don't know. I'll move on. This I think is Anthony's other shot, if I remember rightly. Let's have a look at the shooting data on it. Yeah, Harway again on there. This one I would think about cropping in post-production, and I would wonder whether a square will work for it. Can we just squeeze it in on the square? Just about with it. The exposure, I think we can push up a little bit, and clarity's already gone up a little bit on there. So something along those lines with it. It's a nice shot. I like the triangular effect with it. I think that works. I think clarity is the thing to play with on here. If you're editing on the phone in Snapseed, as I think you do, then presence and structure, I think, are the two which are in Snapseed. I also think a vignette with it as well help draw you in. Now, one thing to say is about focusing with this. If we look at it, you can see this edge up here is where the focus is. And in reality, we probably want the focus on the stamen in the middle. So I would have aimed for your focus point on there. I don't know with Android phones how you do the focusing. I'm guessing it's a tap, but yeah, tap on that as being the item to focus on, because that's the thing that really should have your have the attention, which would work nicely for this because you'll get that ring of focus around there as well with it. Yeah, one other thing just to say, Anthony, before I move on there. I know from a while back you had a bridge camera. I'd encourage you to shoot more with your bridge camera on these sorts of things, because you'll get much better results than you're getting with a mobile phone, and that's purely down to the size of the optics and the size of the sensor. You're always going to hit the limit, because if we zoom in, you can see you can start to see where the image is breaking up on the edges, and that's just purely down to the optics on there. Spring flowers again. Now this one is a raw file, and it was John Kiss, I believe, sent this one in, and he'd got a couple of crops that he posted to the Facebook group, which I haven't downloaded, and he was wanting some advice on what crop works best. So I've got the completely unedited one, so let's go over to the develop module. I'll do a very quick edit on this using my settings on here. So first of all, I'm going to go with, I think, a cloudy or daylight on it. I'm going to say daylight. We need to bring that exposure right up on here. Is that too far? No, no. A little bit of shadow recovery maybe as I go down. Yep, right, you've got full screen. Maybe a little bit of shadow recovery, not too much, just about that much. Highlight recovery, I do want to bring some in on, and I don't think I need to do anything on transform with it. We'll come back to the cropping later. Now, how much do I want to? I want to boost the colours a little bit on there. I think the exposure still needs to come up more, and those highlights down a little bit more. That's possibly a little too much on the saturation. Just bring that back. Then about colour grading it, do I want to do anything with it on the colour grade? I should quite like that summer day feel to it, but I'm not going to stick with that. So now, before I do any vignetting, I want to think about the crop on here. So it's going into crop mode with it. Now, with that area at the top isn't adding much to this. Now the question is, do we come down to something like that? I'm just giving it a tilt so that's truly there, and just have a little bit at the top on it, and then balance that by coming in. Now I know that was one of the sort of versions that you did, John, which that works well. Now the other thing I would think about is maybe I'm going to keep the yellow out of this so that the colours are all that sort of purple hue. I would actually bring that down just below there so that we're just focused on the flowers. Now that's our hero flower on here. So whenever you're doing flowerscapes, look for one item to be your hero of it, and that's it, I think. Yeah, because that's the one that's sharpest, but it's a little bit close to the center for my liking. So the question is, which way are we going to go with the crop on it? And I would probably do that with it. Now I've got that, I can think about vignetting this to something like that. I think that is what I would do with it to make it work. Do I want to bring up any more of those shadows now? No, maybe no. Not making a huge difference. So right, that would be it. Moving on. From Peter Stanford, I believe. Yes. I like this. Looking at the settings, 160th of a second. I'm going to have a look at the settings a little bit more, find out what mode you were in with this. Center weighted average. Right, what camera? Where does it say? Oh, it's a Nikon. Right. It's interesting you've gone with center weighted average on there. Center weighted average tends to be a slightly older form of exposure calculation, in that it weights it by what's in the middle. You might be better off, and it's worth doing a little bit of an experiment here, Peter. Consider using, I think they call it matrix on Nikons. It's evaluative on Canons, which actually uses an algorithm that's is improved on center weighted average. Center weighted average, what it will do is it will look at what's in the middle here, and well, it actually looks at the whole image and then gives an extra bias to what's in the middle of it. Now, you've probably got away with this because the brightnesses are similar all the way along. But if this was more off to one side and there was a considerable difference in the brightnesses between the duck and the water, center weighted average would have based more on what was in the middle, which is the water, whereas evaluative breaks it up into this matrix of different areas and then goes through and sees, there's one particular area that's a lot different to the rest. That must be where the subject is. Therefore, I will put my my bias towards that. And with most cameras, and most of the time, you get a better result with evaluative stroke matrix on there. The time I would use center weighted average is if I've got a dark subject on a bright background and I want and perhaps a framing around it. So if you've got somebody in a up against a window and you've got this bright area around them, but you've got dark around the edge as well. Evaluative can get a bit confused by that. So center weighted average will say, right, what's in the middle of this? oh, that's the person there, and it will do a better job on it. So that's the sort of time I would use center weighted rather than I would go with evaluative. Composition wise, I like this. I like the blurred wings on there. I like the fact that it's on a third line. I can see you've already cropped it down to about 16:9 on there, and I'm guessing that's to crop out a little bit at the top. So good composition generally on there. Well done, Peter. And similarly with the swan, I think this is lacking a little bit in contrast on there. So I'm just going to reset those extra settings around there. It's looking a little bit flat. Now we can solve that with a little bit of extra contrast, or, well, maybe put a little bit in and then darken it with the blacks, bring that back down. I would then bring a little bit of clarity well, actually I want to bring the vibrance up, but it's actually affecting the blue in the water rather than the orange bill. So I want to put a little bit of blue in there. So I'm going to bring that down because I want that orange to come through, and by doing it on the saturation, that's brought the bill out to that's looking a little bit better on there. Now I need to just sort that blue out, and I can use now a little bit of negative vibrance just to target that and bring it down. White balance, let's make sure. Oh, I think I clicked in the wrong place on there. No. Right, I'm going to use my preset versions for white balance because I've messed it up good and proper, haven't I? Go back to as shot with it, but I think it's a little bit too blue on there. So what happens if a cloudy, daylight, flash, shade? I think daylight, and I do think we need a bit more contrast in it. So there, that's what I would do. Let's have a look before and after with it. Before, after. So you can see basically what I've done, put a little bit more contrast and brought out there. Now I've just realized I might with that, yeah, I've lost a little bit on the highlights there. So I'm just going to pull that back with it. Yep. So I would do something like that. Like the composition on it. I like the dribbling swan with it. So nice one. Right, I think this is Bernard's image. Let's have a look at the shooting data on it. Yeah, Panasonic. Right. Okay, now this is a true raw file, so there's no processing happened on it. Checking focus on there, it's very slightly soft. Let's have a look at the shooting data. Right, right, here we go. This is one of the reasons maybe a little bit soft, is whilst you've got a focal length of 15mm, let's go full screen, of 15mm here, because you're very much a crop sensor with this camera, your effective focal length, your focal length at 35mm is 90mm on here, but you were shooting at 40th of a second, which is really over a stop slower than you should be. So you may have got a little bit of camera shake in there with that. That might account for some of the being less than tack sharp on it, on that one. Now, what can we do with this? Well, let's go into develop module, and I'm going to use my presets on here. Let's find a nice shady white balance. The exposure, I think the exposure needs to come down by about 2/3. Shadow recovery, just bring some detail back into there. highlight recovery. Yeah, I want to protect those highlights, so about there. Transform, let's get this straightened up. I'll use auto, we'll do that. Now, a little bit on what I've called my presence section, which is try and bring in a little bit more info into here. I don't know, I might end up going black and white with this, you know. The sky enhance, I'm going to put a little bit of enhancement into the sky with it. And then, right, what have we got going? Black and white. Coming down on these black and whites, I quite like the 9 on there. Black and white preset 9 is working nicely. And then, do I want to maybe even cream tone it on here? Have a look at other alternatives. Yeah, go with the cream tone, and then a vignette. Because I've got that old look to it, I might just have a white faded edge to it. Just something like that, and then sharpen it is what I would do with it. So before and after, before, after with that. That's doing the presets. That gets me into the right, and then I'll tweak it on here. I think it just needs a bit more contrast with it, and a little bit more recovery in the shadows for it, something like that. Anyway, let's move on. This is the other one that Bernard sent, which is the reflections of the same building. Now this I really like. I'd like to see just perhaps a fraction at the top there. If I go back to here, you've taken this section. Maybe we could have just got a little bit of the building here in this section into here, but I like the colours on this. Again, I'll take the clarity down for the moment. A bit of contrast and a little bit more saturation into there. And there's not much else I'd like to do with that one. It's a nice shot, it's a nice way of presenting it, and whilst I often encourage people to invert these, this one I don't think needs it because the steps work both ways on there, so it works nicely. Oh, whose is this? Is this another one of Gary's? Oh, whoever it is, I haven't put their copyright in there by the looks of it. Copyright not given. Right, okay. I think this was one of Gary's. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, my apologies. Oh no, it is Gary's. It says so at the bottom on here. Bit of negative space going on here. I would go with a slightly different crop. I'd come down a little bit and I would straighten that horizon on there to something like that. And I'd be tempted, I don't know whether this is going to work or not, just to try pushing it off to one side rather than having it in the middle on there. Maybe even come down further like that. Yeah, I wonder whether that horizon is meant to slope. It's difficult because the trees are all sloping. Because if the trees were vertical, that's interesting. Ah. Now I like that. That I like, having played around with it, where the trees go vertical and the horizon line isn't. And that, for me, works better than the original, because it's now slightly intriguing, because we've got those vertical trees, we've got this slope, and I think that works better for it, Gary. Right, John Barton. Right. He showed the original and the edit, and he's managed to lose the edited version. So I've only got the Facebook version of it, which is a shame, actually. But let's have a look back at the original on there. And I'm just going to do a very, very quick edit on this, because obviously we've already... but the things I would watch with this is making sure everything is vertical and horizontal on that. It wasn't on the other, so I'd tighten that up on there like that. Maybe even bring it in a little bit more at the bottom. Now, contrast, whack the contrast up a little bit. And basically what he did was a sort of pop colour on the red, a red-blue pop colour on it. And the way I do that in here is, if I go to saturation, bring the reds up, bring the blues up, and then bring everything else down. And you can see I've almost taken them completely out, but not quite. In fact, I'm going to bring them back just a little bit, which gives that. So we've got that hint of colour with it on there. And then I think to replicate what you got, there was a bit more clarity, the highlights were brought down, contrast went right up, and I've got to do something with those shadows, try and protect those shadows. And then, of course, we had a vignette to it, that, and I've put a heavy one on for it. Do I want to remove some of the colour down here? Maybe. So adjustment brush K, and what I'm going to do is reset everything, and I am going to take down the saturation almost all the way. I'm going to bring the flow right fair way up. I want auto mask off, and I can just then paint over those just to try and kill some of the saturation that's there. Actually, I think I need more flow than it's giving on there. Just try and kill that down, and I think something around like that would do it. So how does that compare with John's version? That was John's, and that was my version of that effect, and before and after, original and afterwards. So there we go. Moving along, have we come to the end? We've come to the end of them. Right, okay, so let's see what's been going on in chat. Right, not a lot happening in chat while I've been doing that. So how are we doing on time? We're 8:15. Right, let's move on. So no Q&A on there. Let's head over into Photoshop, and I will do a live version of my beginner's guide to Photoshop. Now, I know not everybody on the live stream uses Photoshop, but I've had a few people request Photoshop tutorials, and this seems to be the appropriate time and place to do them. So right, we've looked at things like the layout, a general overview of it. We've looked at layers, masking, blend modes, and last week I looked at how you could use the paintbrush and some of the paintbrush tools. Today I'm going to look at the clone tool and what we use that for. So this is an image of a theatre in Manaus in Brazil. Yep, that's right, this is where the Brazilian variant comes from, Manaus of COVID. Right, and what I'm going to talk about on here is the clone stamp. Now, clone tool is over here. It's the one that looks like a rubber stamp. Let me go full screen so you can see. One that looks like a rubber stamp. We've got a number of sort of options up here. Oh, that was me playing earlier. I'll get, oh, no. Get, delete, yes. Delete. Right, so what I'm going to do with this is just run through a few things with the clone stamp tool. We can control the size of it, same way as we could control a brush we looked at in the last last tutorial. And we've got the size and the hardness. So I'm looking at that. That's about the size I want. Nice and small on there. Fairly soft on the edge is always good with it. Occasionally you can use it other than that. Now, what would we use it for? We use it for correcting problems. So I'm just going to zoom right in. I'm holding the space bar as I move it around. It's the hand tool. And I'm just going to zoom in on, yes, I know it's part of the flag, but let's assume I want to get rid of the blue area on there. So how do I do it? I use the clone tool. I look for where I want to sample from, and I'm going to go from somewhere up here. And I hold the Alt key down, we get a target. So I'm going to go and say that I'm going to sample from somewhere about here. And I now click on that point. That's my sample point. I release the Alt key, and as I move it around, you can see there's a preview of that area under the brush. So now what I do is I line that up to where it fits in. So that's more or less the right position. And I can now just start painting over the blue area. And it's not a perfect lineup because we're on a curved surface here. But you can see that's not a bad job at removing it, which is fine. I've done that on the image. Now, that's one way of doing it, but the way I would recommend is not that, Control Z, is I would then put in another layer. We've looked at layers in the past, so plus to add a layer over the top. And now, if I start painting in, what am I doing? I'm painting on the layer above. Now, why is that significant? And why is that the best way to do it? A little bit of blue come in there. Why that's significant is I can now turn that layer off and on again. And you can see the bit I've got. It's there. So now, suppose as I was doing this, let's suppose, I'll just carry on a little bit. Oh heck, I've gone down into there. Now, if I'd done that on the main background layer, there's not a lot I could do about that. So the fact that I'm on a layer above, I can take the erase tool, which is this one. Ooh, way too large. I'm using the square bracket to change the size of that down and make it quite small, and I can just erase that from that layer and bring back what's underneath on there. So that's the advantage of when you use the clone tool, put it on a layer of its own so you can control what's being used and what's going on with it on there. Now, the other thing to note about this is I've actually lost the setting. Oh no, that's why I couldn't find it, because I've moved off the tool. Right. Is this thing called aligned. Now, what does aligned do? Let me show you by holding Alt and selecting an area that's on the green up here. If I start painting on down here, you can see that you get to a point where the yellow starts to come through, where it's just that. I release it and I come back and it still lines up with that basic start point. Now, if I take aligned off, let me undo all that painting on. I've got aligned off. I'm still going to select the same point up here, hold the Alt key down and click. Now, whilst I hold the mouse button down, we get to that point where the yellow's coming through. Can you see? I release the mouse and I want to carry on, and now I've got the green back again, which is great. If I want to do a large area of green, I just keep releasing the mouse and I can keep adding green here, because every time I release, it moves my source back to that point that I'd selected. So undo all that on there. So that's what aligned does with the clone tool. Now, previously we looked at using blend modes with layers. What I want to do now is show you how you can use blend modes with brushes. Now, one thing I need to tell you about with this, I'm just going to get my section that I want to work on, is that having said all this thing about using an extra layer on the top, this is the one thing that doesn't work with that extra layer on top. So I'm just going to delete, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll show you. I'm going to take it off. I'm going to select the background layer to do this, and you'll see what's going on. Now, suppose I wanted to fill this window in with the yellow that's in there. So I could, with my brush, hold the Alt, select there, and I could try very hard to paint in here, but oh dear, I'm going over the edges, and it's really, really tricky to do. So what I would want to do, I'd look at this and go, hang on a minute, that is much brighter and much lighter than this dark area down here. So what I would do is I would change my brush mode to lighten. And remember, we looked at the difference between those different ones on there last time. I now sample here, go down here and start painting. And can you see what's happening? It's only affecting the pixels where it will make it brighter. So these already light areas aren't being affected. But it's done it directly on the background. So we might think, let's undo that. Let's go up onto our layer here and do it on there. So I now go round on here with it, and oh dear, it doesn't work. And that's right, it doesn't work when you do it on a layer above using that technique. It's a very powerful technique, and you can use it for filling in things like that, but that's not really where the power of it comes. The power of using a mode on here and working directly on the image itself is when you want to deal with a problem in an image. And here's a good example. I wanted to try and show you one where you can actually use this technique to remove stubble off someone's face. And I couldn't find an image where I could demonstrate it. But instead, here's a more common problem. I'm just going to change my pointer so you can see it. Can you see this halo around here? I zoom in 200%. I've done a lot of work on the sky on here, and not uncommonly, we've got this halo effect round the outside. So what we can do, we want to get rid of that, and this is where using a brush tool really works. using the clone stamp tool, I should say, really works. I'm holding the Alt key. I'm going to select a colour just up here. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to set the mode to darker colour. And now look what happens. As I paint over there, the only pixels it affects are the ones which are lighter, are the light colour, and makes them dark. So this dark edge doesn't get affected at all. I can go right into this and look what's happening. I'm not painting anything at all on there. And I can just very quickly go around, and I've got rid of that halo practically in a single brush stroke there. And I could do the same up on this side, holding the space bar to move my screen along. And again, I'm just going to select here, and you can see in a single action, actually it should be full screen on this so you can see it a bit better. You know why? Because I'd taken aligned off when I released my cursor. Right, so I'm going to select here and then just keep going. You see how quickly and easily that halo has gone from the image. Whoa, went over a little too far there. But there, you get the idea on that. So that's my quick, well, not so quick maybe, Photoshop tutorial for those of you who've been asking for it. That's one way of cleaning up your images if you've done that extensive processing, as we all do, that generates the halos. And you can see that's at 100%, that is really nice and clear on there. I haven't done round the edge there, but it just shows you the technique, how we apply it on there. So let's carry on. Let's see what's been going on in chat. Oh, not a lot. Have I lost you all on there? Right, so moving along then. No more Q&A on there. Right, so let's have a look at the few Facebook photos that I picked this week and head over to Lightroom. So let's look at the Facebook ones. I've only got 8 of them to talk about this week. And this one, this is from my studio by Bill Rich, and this is a cheat shot. What do you think you're looking at there? It looks like it's somebody peering out of a window, doesn't it? And this is an old trick in the studio. You have a little bit of wallpaper behind. In fact, that wallpaper is sitting on a bit of card. You can't see it, folks, but it's not card, on hardboard on the wall just to my left. And she's actually looking at the softbox on there. It just looks like the window. And sometimes I'll just put some mesh, some net curtain draped over there, and you can have your subject peering through as though they're looking out of a window. All done in the studio. Nice processing, Bill. Like the toning on it. Nice shot. Petra. I should have tagged you to say I was going to do this. I'll do that afterwards. It's a nice shot. I like the idea, but it's underexposed. I know what's happened. The camera's got confused by the highlights of the sun, but let's sort this one out. I would go more with the reflection there, and I'd lose the glare at the top. So let's bring that down, maybe bring that up to put the horizon on the third line on there. Now let's bring the exposure up to try and bring out the colours in there, and a little bit on the shadows with that. Highlights down to try and protect that information. Now, a white balance on here. Do we want to go and make it a nice sort of orangey summer day or a wintry one with it. I think a little bit of oranginess to it. Push the clarity up. Get the exposure about right on there. I think a bit more in the shadows for that. And the saturation. Let's bring out that warmth in there. With it, maybe that's a little bit too far. I think it is a bit too far. Let the vibrance do the work on here. So we've got something like that. I would also do a vignette on here. And I just do a very slight vignette in something like that. So before and after, that's the sort of effect I would go with. It might be nice to try and get a bit of blue in the sky, and that's possible with a gradient tool. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reset everything at the moment and put the tool in. I'm holding the shift to make sure it stays horizontal, bringing it down to about there, and I'm going to just use the temperature slider to make the sky look a little bit bluer, but with that little bit of orange on it. Do I want to bring it all the way down? Yeah, I think something like that. And ooh, I do like playing with this hue tool. Reset it. It's not actually helping any. I just like playing with it. On there. Oh, it should be full screen. Sorry about that, folks. Right. And what else would I do with it? I think that's as much as I'd want to do on there. Yeah, I think that's what I would do with it, Petra. Hope that helps. Raoul. Raoul's been posting a number of photos to the Facebook group this week, and they've been absolutely stunning. I'm not going to attempt to change anything. In fact, I'm going to make sure that any settings I had on there are removed. And I really love this sort of Middle Eastern tea shot. It brings back many memories of traveling in the Middle East on there. I think this one's Amanda's. She was saying, did this as a negative space one. I would say, Amanda, it isn't negative space. The idea of negative space is where the space itself becomes part of your composition, and this is just a snowdrop bang in the middle. Can we make a negative space from it? Potentially, if we did something like that, but that's more of a negative space. It tends to be more on one side rather than all the way around when you have negative space in an image on there. That needs to be white. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about the white balance on this. Try and warm it up slightly. Something like that. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, here's another one of Raoul's. Lovely toning on this, lovely use of light on there, both the light streaming in and the light refracted and reflected through the glass. Donata, I like this shot, but it just offends me that the word cold is upside down on the tap. I would have turned the tap on or something just to get it the right way up. Or if I couldn't do that, I'd do something in Facebook to turn it round. I'm not going to do that now, but that's the sort of thing I would do with that shot. Sarah Jane, welcome to the Facebook group, and I quite like this. It's an unusual idea of coming in tight on the horse. I think. I'm not sure about exactly where the crop should be on this. I might be tempted to bring it in a little bit tighter to get the eye on a 1/3 line. So to do something like that, The other thing to watch is the ears very, very close to the top of the frame up here, and I try to avoid that if at all possible. Just allow a little bit more space around the outside on there. I hope that's helped, Sarah. Another fantastic shot from Raoul. I love the amount of clarity that you've put in here, which really makes it work. Nice colours and everything on that. I believe there's a very subtle vignette on there, but it is so subtle that it just works on it. So really, really well done. The only thing I would caution is the amount of space at the top on it. I would tend to perhaps bring it down just a little bit more to maybe there, like that, on there. But that's about the only thing. Oh, wrong way. And that is it. So let's see how we're doing. So we've got no further questions in the Q&A. So it's time to wrap up. So we've come to the end of the time on here. And thank you for submitting your images. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, comment, like and all that on there. If you found this helpful and want to say thank you in a financial way, the link's down below for my Buy Me a Cuppa campaign. And as I said earlier, thank you, Peter, for tonight's cuppa. On there, and need to go back. Sunday, as I said, we're going to look back over a year of live streams. I'm going to share a few of my favourite moments on there, just a few. Talk about what's worked, what hasn't worked, and I'm going to talk about a few changes I'm making to the live stream. I don't want to spoil the surprise, so I won't tell you what they are now. Do tune in on Sunday, because I think it is important, because as I'm going through what I'm planning to do, if I've got it horrendously wrong with the changes I'm going to make, you can actually say so live and I can change my mind, then we can adjust it. So we're not going down the wrong route with the live streams on that. So hopefully see you all on Sunday for that. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for joining me for the show, and I'll see you next time. See you on Sunday, and until then, keep making great images. Bye for now.